Hello, my beautiful, gorgeous dance baby, and welcome to another episode of More Than Dance. Today, we are discussing burnout and how to prevent burnout from happening. And if you're like me, you have experienced burnout not once, not twice, potentially 3 times or more in different levels of severity. And it's kind of a funny thing with us as humans because we do things that we know this is going to equal this, and yet we still do it. Sometimes it's not a choice and we get burned out because we literally have to. And I'm going to talk about that later on in this episode. And just in case you're like, oh, I really want to know about that, you'll hear me referencing something about seasons. And that is going to be one of the most helpful things for you to take on with you in your current season of potentially burnout. But we're going to reframe that a little bit later. So for those of you who are experiencing burnout and you know that it's preventable, you just don't know how, we are going to talk about that right now in the first half of this episode. So something to talk about first, just so we're all on the same page, is what is burnout? So sometimes when this question comes up, it's kind of funny to define because burnout, I for one get this visual of like that hot steamy emoji, like where the emoji's like hot and it's like red and like the tongue's out and like fire. So like I have a picture of what burnout, I guess the picture of burnout for me is the hot emoji. I think when you think about burnout, you can flash into a part of your life where you're like, I was really burned out then. And I wish I did XYZ, or I was really burned out then and that really took a toll on me. So right now I invite you to just think about a time where you were burned out. And I'm going to share with you an experience where I was burned out. So for those of you who don't know this, I used to teach 30 classes a week. And this was part of my schedule. I just did that. Like I owned the studio and I ran those classes. And because I was in the phase of building up my studio, I would teach anywhere and everywhere all throughout the day. And so grateful that I get to put all of my time into the studio now and my DJ business and the photo business and the podcast. So I'm so grateful for all of that. And I'm also so grateful for the experience of all of these other teaching opportunities. And chances are, if you're watching this right now, you maybe have met me through one of those teaching experiences. So I used to teach at the WOW Blast, health tracks, different schools around Providence and East Providence, Boston Sports Club. I used to teach in Taunton, in Fall River, Needham, Norwood, Dean College, Brown University, Providence College. Like I was all over the place. And so you can imagine I was all over the place mentally. I had different classes and I had different folks in each of those classes. So the classes I taught ranged from Zumba to spin to gold and fit to Pilates to Brazilian butt lift and total sculpt, stretch, dance with children. I mean, I really was teaching all these different classes in all these different places. Well, you do the math on that. And that's a lot of cognitive reframes throughout the day. So yes, my body was working hard for all of the classes I was teaching per week. And in addition, it was working extra hard because every time I stepped into a new class or a new location throughout my week, I was doing a lot of thinking to get into the mode of doing that thing. So it's kind of funny because before we even get into the physical exhaustion, there was a mental exhaustion that was happening. So I'd prepare for one class and then an hour later switch gears completely and do a different class. And then still think about messaging people who are asking me about my studio. And then I would be driving and I'd be having to worry about food. And it was just an on-the-go day. And the day would start sometimes at 6 a.m. and it wouldn't end until 11 p.m. I mean, it was really a recipe for disaster. And it was a recipe for this is gonna not have longevity. And also, I had to do what I had to do, right? Because I opened up my dance studio and I was thinking like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make this thing work. And it's funny because I don't regret doing those classes. And if you're wondering, and if I'm being completely honest and transparent, which is what I usually love to do, it wasn't the most intense session of burnout. And I'm thinking probably in other episodes to come out, like my true burnout experience might really come out. And it's funny to me though, how like burnout is such a physical and a mental thing. And we also get ourselves in the stage of, hey, we got to move and we got to just do what we're doing. And our autopilot goes on and it's like, okay, like, let me do this. And there's conscious thought, but there's not conscious reflection. And the reflection is what tells us, like, hey, are all of these things adding up to your big goal? And I've talked about this before and how I love to create stages of goals. Like I have my rocks, which I'm doing quarterly, and then I have my yearly, and then I think about things in terms of the 5-year and the 10-year. Not so much the 10-year, because I think we just have the ability to change and shift so much. So without a time period, I usually just think of things that I really want to do, and I don't technically put a time period on them. For example, when I knew I wanted to create Risky Boudoir, I thought about that in 2012, but it wasn't like, this is my 10-year plan that I'm going to have this studio. It was more like, this is something I want to do, and I know I'll do it at some point. So when we get into these zones of burnout, sometimes we forget to do the reflection that goes with it. And when you're in autopilot, right, you're not exactly thinking. You're kind of just like, in autopilot, you're doing things because you're doing them. And if we're in a mode of reflection, we're thinking, okay, we're doing them. Why am I doing them? And why am I doing them this way? So my first piece of advice for you when you're thinking about how to get yourself out of the habit or out of the constant loop of getting yourself into burnout is to, one, do some reflection. Now, I know you're thinking, well, Chrissy, I'm trying to just move and go, and that's why I'm burned out. So how am I going to make time for reflection? Well, my biggest trick for you is going to be this gigantic word of prevention. Now, when you have a second, when you maybe hop out of this season or something changes for you, and things can change. It can be a work-related change. It can be you finally got the courage to get out of the relationship that you're in change. It could be a change like you've been thinking about moving and you finally did it. So now all that extra time is now freed up. So you get a little more time to include prevention into your daily routine. Now, the daily routine is going to include reflection, and it's going to include time for reset. And what you're thinking is, oh, okay, she's going to say like, leave some time for meditation or make sure. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say, there was a point in my life where I decided, okay, I want to prevent myself from feeling like I need to have a vacation. And this is the other magic word that I want to bring into your life. And if you know me, you know that I pick a word every year and I focus on that word for the year. This year's word is decide. And one year, my word was balance. And then the year after that, the word was boundaries. And those two words, I'm sure you can already like do the math. You're like, oh, well, in order to have balance, you needed to have boundaries. Hence why you probably had balance for 1 year and realized, oh, we got to work on boundaries too. So yes, they go hand in hand. And it's important to have balance, and it's important to have boundaries to be able to implement balance. And to implement balance, we need to have boundaries. So those to me are like the perfect match. It's like two little magnets of positive and negative, or a yin and a yang. And it's so funny because they're separate, yes, and they work best when they're together. So bringing up that idea again of contrast and knowing that we experience light because we know how to experience darkness. We experience darkness because we experience light. We understand how to experience balance because we know how to implement boundaries, and we know how to implement boundaries because we know how much balance is important. So when we're in this prevention phase or this prevention mode, it involves reflection, it involves boundaries and balance. And I had this thought that I was like, okay, what could I do for myself? So I'm a small business owner. Everyone knows when you own your own business, you work every day, you work every hour. And what I found was, as much as I'm putting in the effort into the studio and doing all this output, I get to do some input as well. And what I mean by that is bringing things into my life. And one of those things is, despite the fact that I really wanted to work and I knew that would be benefiting my business, I knew that also slowing down would benefit me And therefore, if it benefited me, I am my business, and therefore it would benefit my business. So it's kind of like a really like triangular story that I'm sharing, because when I'm rested and when I'm not burned out, I'm able to fuel into myself. And when I feel great, I'm able to fuel into my business. And then it just circulates like that. And when I was experiencing these classes, I was on the go. I was on the move. There really wasn't opportunity for me to fuel myself. Vacations weren't possible. I would have to get coverage for all of those classes in 1 week and then close my studio. And it didn't ever seem worth it. What always seemed worth it to me was to continue to do. Continue to work. And don't get me wrong, working and feeling successful and making money, that all feels so good. It really does. And so does feeling fulfilled. Now, we talked a little bit about the definition of burnout, but there's one part I left out. And that's this idea that, going back to my visual, picturing that hot, sweaty emoji, and then also this idea of like maybe this emoji that's like the smirky one that's like, how dare you? And that emoji to me is like, obviously sometimes it's a little slippery, and we know that that means something, at a certain time of night. And also it means like, what you doing? What you doing? Who you with? I'm just kidding. What are you doing? I see what you're doing. You're doing that thing you like. We talked about this. We don't want to do this again. We don't want to get wrapped up into the burnout phase again. That visual for me is the warning, like, hey, watch it. You're going down a path right now that's going to get you set up for resentment. So in my mind, burnout is exhaustion, mentally and physically, and then the resentment of that. And sometimes it's you're working so hard and you're not seeing results. That could be it. Sometimes it's, I just got to plow through this stuff to get where I really want to go. And I understand that that's what you think you need to do. However, it's not a fact until it's proven. So I'm not trying to call you out, and I'm also trying to call you out. I want you to think about the times when you're doing and you're doing and you're doing and you're doing. And I want you to ask yourself, why? And you're going to give me some answer. Well, especially if it's work related. Okay, well, I need to work. I need to make money. I have these goals, blah, blah, blah. Okay. If it's dance, well, I just want to go to dance and I want to get this goal and I just want to achieve it and do it. And if it's with friends or family or overexerting yourself socially, it's, well, I told this person I would do this and I need to do it and this and that. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just there's an opportunity here for reframe and growth, which I love. The first reframe is in this idea of validation. Sometimes we get into the habit of doing and overdoing because we just want validation. And we just want external output to fill us and to fuel us and to tell us like, you're doing so good. Have you ever experienced that before where you've met someone and they just do, and you can kind of tell that they just need and want you to say, good job doing all those things. This is classic people pleaser mode right here. This is also textbook for a burnout disaster. On the one hand, you're feeling like you need to do it, so you do it. On the other hand, you're feeling like, I'm not even getting what I need and what I want, which is to feel validation. Now, I know we haven't done an exact episode on validating yet, but we have touched on it. And the best validation comes from yourself, not external validation. So my question to you, going back to that question, why? Why are you doing all this? Do you think it's possible you're looking for more validation? And if so, how do you create validation for yourself? Certain things like validation could be recognizing progress, understanding that one time when you were stuck and you got yourself unstuck, understanding those moments where you've gotten a little bit of momentum, understanding that, hey, maybe you recognize you want outside validation and then you turn something on in your head and you're like, oh, I remember I got to do that on my own. Because to be honest, you're going to give yourself the best validation possible. There's nothing that you need to prove to others if you're proving it to yourself already. Now, the second thing would be this whole people-pleasing mentality, right? I better do this. I said yes to this, even though I didn't want to do it. So you burn yourself out socially or with family or with friends or with things that don't even feel social to you. They just feel like things you got to do on your list. And I love and appreciate the ability to be a yes man or a yes woman and say, yes, I'm into it. What I don't love to experience, and if you're like me and you've experienced this before, is the cancellations from people who are overexerting themselves. So while you're thinking about being a people pleaser and you're saying yes and like, okay, good, I'm in, but then you cancel last minute, you got yourself stuck in a bind because you're like, oh crap, I overexerted myself. I don't want to do it. I can't do it anymore. You're feeling bad about not doing it. Your heart's not in it now. And funnily enough, had you said no in the first place, that person now that you canceled last minute on would now not even have feelings to even feel when you cancel on them. So that's why people pleasing is this whole like funny thing in my brain, because I do, believe it or not, heal a lot of people pleasers. And by nature, if we're thinking again of yin and yang, there's the people pleaser and then there's the person that experienced the people pleasers. So I usually end up being on the other end where I'm experiencing the people pleasing. And I got to be honest, from my end, it's not that pleasing. Give yourself this freedom to say no in the beginning, or even maybes. And this is a fun little trick that I do with my friends. When I'm not sure about something and I don't want to commit, I tell them the percentage of where I'm committed at. So if you are friends with me and you're listening to this, you're like, yep, she definitely does do that. And I mean, even just this weekend, my friend was like, oh, do you want to da-da-da-da-da? And I'm like, this is what's going on. This is da-da-da-da. I do want to, but this is how much I'm in. It's 50%. I'll let you know if that changes. And I don't want to commit because when I commit, I'm 100. So I like to be so upfront with my yes, my no, or my maybe, because I feel like that's the true pleasing. The pleasing isn't always saying yes. The pleasing is being 100% authentic, 100% honest with where you are. And just to like tag a little thought onto that too, when you get the conversation going, other options can arrive. So, okay, that's cool that you're 50% with that. You know, I didn't really totally want to do that idea anyway. Maybe we could do another thing that is a little more accessible for both of us. I just said that because, you know, I thought that that's something that you would want to do. And so now you get to actually know your friends deeper, know your family deeper. So, and the third way we get ourselves stuck into this trap of being burned out. So first we talked about the validation. Second, we talked about the people pleasing. And the third is when we feel like there's no other option. And sometimes this is the universe asking us to be creative. So in my story that I shared with you, if I wanted to stop my burnout, the universe could have asked me, okay, how can you figure out, because the real reason I was doing that was to stay busy, right? To feel like I was doing something. I wanted to feel like, okay, you're doing something. I'm teaching all these classes. I'm doing all this. Like, was I doing the right things? And yeah, there's no right, there's no wrong. There's just is. I do get that. And the universe is asking me to be more creative. Well, how can I work? Have you ever heard that phrase of work smarter, not harder? This is kind of like that idea. And how can I get an opportunity to do and build exactly what I'm building with less work? And can I sit down with myself to figure out a way? And something about these questions, they're kind of funny because the answer might feel impossible. It might feel like, oh, in order to do that, I mean, I would have to do this, this, and 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 then I would see results. Okay. And sometimes this is where I ask this question, which hard do you want? Do you want the hard that's hard right now and then it makes it easier later on? Or do you want the hard that's going to be hard forever? Logically, I'd rather work hard now and then free up my time later on. Maybe I get more opportunity to do other things with that time. And then we question, do we even believe that? And this is where that whole idea comes in of seasons. There are working seasons and there are restful seasons. And I think I've mentioned this before, where the thing I can best compare this to is we all have different bodies and we all absorb nutrients differently. And my body, for example, absorbs carbs better than it absorbs fats. You're either an ectomorph, an endomorph, or a mesomorph. There's 3 different kinds. I forget what they are. It might be fun for you to look up. And there's seasons that are just like that. So just like in these body types, different nutrients absorb differently. The same is true for the way your seasons will work for you. And for me, I noticed that I like to have a working season and a little bit of a rest, and a working season and a little bit of a rest. So when I've had time to reflect, because remember, when we're burned out, we're not really thinking about reflection. We're not doing these extra things that we can put into our days. We're kind of just, remember, we're in that autopilot vibe and we're just going. We're go, go, go. When we do create that time for reflection, we're able to think about the things that we need and the things that fuel us. Now, there would be no way for me to know this had I not given myself the opportunity to know it. And once you know it, because we talk about this all the time, once you are aware, you can implement anything. You can really figure it all out for yourself so that things become better and easier. You know, we love the word ease. And one of the things I found that would be great for me to implement would be a steady vacation. For the first 9 years of my business, I didn't take a vacation. I didn't even try. And there were times that I did go away, and it was never a vacation. It was like very much I'm away and I'm working. And now what I try to do is actually implement 3 times a year to 4 times a year where I can take a full vacation. And I'm catching myself right now because I'm like, ooh, Chrissy, you haven't done that. I haven't done it in 2 years. And I'm down to 1 vacation a year that I've actually taken. I really thoroughly take like a vacation. And giving myself this reminder of like, girl, you got to put that back in because it prevents burnout. Are you ever around children and you're like, okay, like everyone go to the bathroom, like make sure you go before we leave. And then you're like, oh, well, like I don't have to. I don't have to go right now. Try to go anyway. So when it comes time for the point where you really need a vacation, you're not worried about it. You have it already booked. Just like if you go to the bathroom before you leave the house, you're not stranded on a road trying to find a bathroom. Now, it can be possible that you just have to go into a burnout mode to get by. And it's okay because certain instances in life are going to ask that of you. And it's going to be really hard to be like, oh no, let me plan my vacation right now in the midst of moving or in the midst of you giving birth or in the midst of really big life things that are happening that are kind of like, I just kind of put those in like a different category because our everyday work is our everyday work. But these big life moments, they kind of come in sometimes unexpectedly. Like I know for Josh and I, we had 2 gigantic moves in the year 2020. We didn't plan for those, and we both got really burned out from those experiences. And so sometimes burnout or feeling burned out is a byproduct of doing something that you really got to do. And I want to invite you to think about that in a different way because yes, it's burnout. And also, yeah, you had to do what you had to do. And that's okay. I really want to focus on preventative ways to avoid burnout for when it's more expected than not expected. And I want you to think about these times of burnout where it's like you just have to plow through. We might need to just call it a different name because to me, a season like that is all about survival. So it's no doubt that you'll be burned out in contrast to a situation that's not survival that's causing you burnout. So like working yourself so hard with no breaks day after day after day, is that so necessary? Are you surviving that much? Or can you invite yourself to think more creatively? Can you figure out ways to make better income? Can you do something now that's so hard, but it's going to make things less hard in the future versus hard forever? So we do things, we implement things so that we can preserve ourselves to avoid burnout and to avoid resentment that comes with burnout and to then avoid detachment. So put yourself in that zone of where you've been really burned out. How connected are you to yourself? And how connected are you to the people that you love? And speaking for me personally, when I'm in a state of burnout, I'm detached. I am like, I've got my focus so much on like just my basic needs. I got to eat, I got to sleep, and I got to do my thing. Well, if you're in the burnout season, the burnout mode where you're work, 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 and you're thinking about that, do you think you're making time for yourself to eat? Are you making time for yourself to bond with your significant other? Are you making time to see your friend that you haven't seen in a while? Are you scheduling something with, your mom or your dad as a nice little fun date for the two of you? Probably not. You're probably just thinking like, I just got to go and then hopefully I can get some sleep. It's like that visual of like the person in the car and like maybe they're eating like something really quick. And it's like, you got that visual with me, right? It's how can we make that more peaceful? And the way we do it is by changing our priorities, because what you value gets protected. When you're protecting things, you're protecting your priorities. And then you're able to move in a very different way. So in this case, your priorities would be, first, you're going to make your time for your sleep. Second, make time for your meals. Third, make time for your activities, things that you really want to do, people you want to see. And then 4, implement where you need to work. Because if you're doing these 3 things, your work will feel like it's perfectly aligned with the life that you want to live. And because of that, you're going to be drawing in exactly what you need to flourish. And when you're fulfilling yourself, you show up differently. So the things that you're doing in your priority number 4, which is like your work, the stuff that's bringing in your income, you find yourself with maybe bigger accounts. You find yourself showing up in more of a confident way, being able to ask for that raise. On the dance floor, you find yourself more aligned. So the classes that you wish to take are the ones that are going to fuel you and fulfill you so that you're able to reach your goals. Because if your goal is, I really, really want to just get some exercise, and you find yourself trying to do, 8 hours of dance a day, it's probably not as necessary as you think. You might find that there is a day when you might need to do that. I know when we're getting ready for our performances, that's a season for us, a season of a lot of work. And gosh, that's not sustainable. If we did that all year round, the way that we do it in that season, it wouldn't be sustainable, and therefore it wouldn't be fun, and it wouldn't give us everything that we love about it when we do it. So when we think about burnout and we think about the idea that, I just have to do it. I have to. It's this idea that we are overcommitting without replenishment. So if we replenish ourselves, or I don't know if plenish is a word. Replenish, let's look it up. Replenish. That's funny. Plenish is a word. So plenish doesn't sound right. Well, when I think of plenish, I think of plentiful. And what I just looked up is it means to fill up, to stock, or to furnish. So are you furnishing yourself with happiness first so you can go about these things that you want to do that are financially going to get you to your goals? And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions is we think that money gets us to our goals. So therefore working more gets us to our goals. In a way, yes, but the other 50% of that is the way that you're showing up around you. Because if you're showing up just kind of like nasty and burned out, I mean, you've seen burned out people before. They're kind of like tough to talk to, tough to engage with. And it's almost like we're pushing everything in our world away because we've gone so long being unplenished. We need to do everything in our power to, it's kind of like the idea of like being dehydrated. Like if you're dehydrated, you're not full of water. And that moment where you finally get water, you're like, I just need all of it. So we overindulge in it. So you might find that when you get off of a burnout season, that you end up feeling like you're spending a longer time in the season of rest because something in your brain is turned on and it's like, no, never bring me back there again. Like I want to do everything to not get there again. So you almost go in the other direction completely, and that's counterintuitive. If you're working so hard and then you get so depleted, the moment that you start to get depleted, you're going to be so away from work and you're going to just want to not work. Versus if you're in this balance of working, replenishing, working, replenishing, working, replenishing, then you get to fulfill yourself while you're working. Those little breaks in a day. I mean, so I used to be a school teacher, so we strategically put moments in our day for the children. There was a snack time. There was an afternoon snack time. If they were really young, there was a nap time. There was a recess time. There was this like moment after lunch to get them ready into the next session. There was the time before the day was out to get them ready to go home. There was a structure to the rest. And the same can be true and exciting for you. How exciting would it be to implement rest in things you love? Just live that life for a second real quick. Think about, oh my gosh, like how cool would that be if I was prioritizing sleep and food and friends first and I still got paid? Or I'm prioritizing the dance classes that I love, the ones that fuel me, the ones I get excited about, the ones that fit my schedule, and I'm still improving? How cool is that? And the funny thing is, we think it's impossible because that's what we're taught. We're taught that it looks really good to be deprived of sleep. We're taught that it looks really cool to just always be on the go, 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 go. For whatever reason, that looks impressive. It looks motivational. It looks inspirational. It looks like, wow, you're working so hard. Well, where are the results? And like, what's the exact fact sheet? Like if we were to do a human scan, let's say that we would, like if we could look at a person and we could do like a little like, scan of their body and scan of their energy, their depletion. When someone's in a burnout phase, you would see a bar graph and there would be different categories, and the category of, exhaustion and depletion and short-tempered, having like a short fuse, that would be like the color red. And then you would see like other colors like purple and blue, and those colors would be like spent time with friends. Nope. And that would be really low. And green would be like food or something, and that would be like low, like no, they haven't been nourished. And then like blue would be like the water tally, and it would be like really low because no, they haven't even had time for that. And it's like so if we got an opportunity to do this body scan, we wouldn't be trying to attain it. We would see it and be like, here, let me offer you a water bottle. Like, hey, can I offer you this? As opposed to, oh, wow, you work so hard, or like, no, that's not cute. Being burned out is not attractive. Being burned out isn't something that we should even think to want. And it's funny because I'm saying this and it's like, yeah, like no one's saying like, I want to be burned out. What you are saying is, I wish I could work as hard as this person, or I wish I could do this stuff that this person is doing. And okay, well, one, we're comparing. And number two, like, do you really want that? Like, you sure? Because they're wishing that they had your life right now of things being calm and not having to be so invested in finding their validation or people pleasing or not thinking that they're enough. Those things can be so tough and so hard to see when you're in a state of burnout because you're not thinking that those two things are even correlated. Those things are so different. It's like, oh, like validation, oh, that has nothing to do with burnout. It does though. And the sooner you can validate yourself or say no and have these really strong boundaries to give yourself more balance, the less you're going to find yourself in circumstances where you get burned out. It's this idea that we glorify exhaustion. Oh, wow, I only had 2 hours of sleep last night. Oh, wow, you go, girl. Like, no. We should be saying, oh my gosh, 7 hours minimum, please. And then the question of identity can come up. And it's so funny. I bet you're like, wow, I didn't realize all these things are tied to burnout. I didn't either until I started really thinking about it. And oftentimes you're going to find that these topics are related to a lot of what my students go through and that I myself go through. And so this is just a great moment that I can share with you. If there's ever a topic that you really want to talk about, like send it to me and I will take moments of reflection to think about what I think about it and to share whatever pieces of advice that I've found that have helped me or my students. So yes, burnout and identity are tied, and here's why. So when we are finding ourselves doing, going, and then we're getting that external validation, we're putting ourselves in a positive feedback loop that says, You're doing great. You're doing good. Good job. Keep going. So-and-so just gave you a high five, or like, this is where I picture like those TikTok lives where they're just like dropping fruits and like ice creams and you're like, good job, you're burning out. Like, no, that's not what we want. However, we're thinking like, oh my gosh, well, would these people even like me? What would they even have to say about me if I wasn't go, go, go? That's what I'm being recognized for. So therefore, why not continue to do it? And I resonate with this because if you know me, you do know that I'm go, go, go. I'm always busy. And yeah, for whatever reason, that does feel good to hear. Like when you're like, oh, you're so busy, you're doing this. I'm like, yeah, like I am so busy. I work so hard. Yes, go me, I work. And go you work and you rest. So to learn the skill of implementing rest so that I can avoid burnout is actually what gets to validate me more. Because now I can say this to myself. Wow, you're working so hard and you have vacation. Wow, you're working so hard and you're having so much fun. Wow, you work so hard and look at you having time to rest in the middle of the day. Or wow, you work so hard and you were able to take that Thursday off when it was the first day of summer and move things around your schedule so you could enjoy the sunshine. And those things don't feel good at first. And once you start to experience them and what they do for you, you get to train yourself to know that that is actually the better compliment. And now we're circling back to being able to validate yourself, compliment yourself. And that can be hard. And again, anything is hard when it's not practiced. The next thing that's important to talk about when we talk about burnout is the passion. Because sometimes the passion can be confusing. Because passion will tell us, do it more, make sure you're doing it more. The rebuttal to that is like, okay, yeah, I probably could do it some more because I do love this. And that's how I feel with dance. Like part of me sometimes is like, okay, let me put another class on. And then I have to hold on and be like, wait a minute, how's your body going to feel? How are you going to feel the next day? You got a wedding the next day. What are you going to do? So I'm very strategic with my schedule these days. And even this week, I have a workshop tonight, a workshop tomorrow, and a workshop the next day, which is usually very rare. And I know that I implemented different things in my day. Things that I would normally do, I didn't do because I allowed myself to rest. It's kind of like counteracting what you're doing. So if I know I have a really busy weekend, I take kind of lighter load in the beginning of the week. Another thing that's similar to this is like when I come back from vacation, I try to keep that entire day just blank until nighttime. I don't put pressure on myself to do things that I would normally do that day. Passion can make it seem like it's perfectly okay that you're burning out because you're passionate about it. And you can also be in both areas. You can be very passionate about something and also take care of you and take care of the things that fuel you to be even more passionate about it. This makes me want to talk about the idea of creativity and choreography. So I always find that if I'm going through a burnout phase, I'm not as creative as I am when I've given myself that proper rest. When I give myself opportunities to slow down and live, a lot of the stuff that I do, like when I'm on vacation or when I'm out in the public, it fuels me in a way that I don't quite know what it is. Even though I'm not working on creativity and I'm not working on choreography, it's such a different experience that it allows my brain to open up and think more creatively. I get excited by colors, by people that I meet, by different beaches, different dogs. And all of those individual stories add up to experiences that make me feel a certain type of way. And whatever I feel, and I'm sure you as a dancer, you also understand this, what you're feeling gets expressed. And if I'm feeling excited and happy and I'm feeling fulfilled, it's almost as if something has cleared, like a sheath has just like cleared from my brain and everything's open and I'm ready to access parts of me that maybe I'm not accessing when I'm burned out. And this is so funny to the point where you can see it on my choreography. If I'm ever just like coming back from a really fun experience, There's something different. I don't know what it is, but it's different. I think of these experiences as like, I don't even know if this is a real thing, but like, is there like something that like shakes sand and it like reveals something? I think of that. Like everything's kind of like foggy or sandy. And when you do something that just like gives yourself so much for fulfillment, it shakes the sand out of the way, it shakes the fog out of the way, and something is so clear. So you can be so passionate about something and not go into burnout. Let's start thinking of avoiding burnout as this thing to glorify. Like, oh, you did that and that and that, and you didn't get burned out? Oh, wow. I want to be like you. I want to be like that. It's not a prize to get a burnout. And I think this comes from our childhood of like doing things and pushing through discomfort. We've gotten this notion that like it's good to push through pain. And while I believe in that, I do feel at the same time that both can exist. I feel like there's a moment, there's a meter that might go off within you. And it's like, yeah, that's my limit. So it's maybe an adjustment of a thermometer where you're adjusting your temperature. So right now, you let yourself get to here. If you're not on YouTube right now and you're listening to this, I'm putting my hand like up really high. And maybe we need to set it a little bit lower in hopes that our threshold will still give us breathable room to where we normally would be burned out. So it's like, oh, we're getting there. It's kind of like the warning, or when someone tells you that they're going to leave a party, but they tell you, okay, I'm going to leave in 10 minutes. Now you can know and you can prepare. So now I get to that warning like, oh, shoot, I'm getting close to that burnout area. Those are the signs. Oh, I'm getting close to that burnout area. I better reel it in. And that brings me to my next point of how to understand your signs of burnout so that you can understand your threshold. So one thing of burnout is, we talked about this already, feeling like you're starting to feel resentment and feeling detached. I would say if you're already feeling those things, you're too far. We want to catch it a little bit sooner than that. So something could be this like a really small thing, but it feels like such a big thing. So if any of your small little things that you're doing in the week feel like mighty, that's a sign that burnout's on its way. Another sign would be when you're feeling tired and you feel like you still need to do certain things. Your body is always trying to tell you what it needs. So when it's tired is kind of funny because tired could mean that you're dehydrated. Tired could mean that you actually just are tired and you need sleep. And tired could mean that mentally something is so heavy that you just need a break from it. So with that, I would say switch gears. You can still do something productive. Maybe instead of being in your masculine energy, you dip into your feminine energy, switch things up. Or if you're in your feminine energy, switch into your masculine energy. And we'll have to talk about this on another day. This is another valuable tool about conserving energy. Conserving energy is going to be so helpful. So that's another beautiful skill that you can bring in to avoid burnout. How can you make 3 things one thing? Something I like to do is I stack. So I work from home and I work at the studio. So on a typical day, I'm doing work from my computer and then I'm doing work at the studio. And I try to strategically plan out when I'm going to leave the house so that 1, there's not traffic, and 2, I'm able to do errands that are near each other. So for instance, when I go to the gym and I need to go to the bank, I do those back to back because it's one time me leaving the house and it's 2 things that I can do that are very close to each other. So I'm saving and conserving energy. Another thing that I can do is I'm a very chatty person. And when I'm feeling like I need to conserve my energy, I turn off the openness. Because if you were to meet me in person, you would know that I'm very open, very willing to talk, want to talk to everyone, strangers and dogs. And when I think I'm getting into a burnout zone, and this is funny because it can go both ways. Sometimes it's beneficial for me to talk and have different conversations because it refuels me in a different way. And sometimes it's not helpful. So we're back to awareness again and knowing what I need. Because sometimes we can get resentful of, oh my gosh, I was only going to go to the gym at for 30 minutes, but I ran into this person and now I was there for an hour. I just wasted 30, but I didn't waste 30 minutes. I had a beautiful conversation with this person and that got me thinking about this, this, and this. Or, yeah, that wasn't a waste of your time, but you did need that time today. So maybe you need to tighten up your boundaries. And that would be the next skill to help you from your burnout, is to make sure that you can tighten up your boundaries and be preventative. So in this instance, I could remind myself, oh, you didn't have time for that conversation. You need to be able to say, I would love to chat with you right now, but I gotta go. Another way you can sense that burnout is coming is when you feel like you just want everything to stop and pause. It's like kind of like the idea of just wanting to quit. You need a break. You get to give yourself a break. So once you feel that feeling, what do you do? How do you implement? So it'd be helpful if you had an idea of what can help you through this. So for me, I know if it's in the summer, I got to go to the beach. If it's in the winter, I need it to rain and I need to put on just a show I've already watched before. It can't be anything new. Because if it's something new, then I need to pay attention. If it's something that I already know, then I'm just like watching it as if I've already watched it. And that feels good somehow. And it allows me to just rest my mind. Usually my mind is getting more burned out than my body lately. The next thing I invite you to do is get really honest with yourself. I'm going to give you a few questions that you can either just think about right now while you're listening, or you can write them down so that you can better reflect on them later. The first question is, what am I trying to prove? The second question is, what would happen if I did less? And the third question is, where am I leaking energy? The answers to these questions can be very helpful in giving you strategies to move forward without getting burned out. So now let's talk about resetting. It's always appropriate to reset after a burnout. And in this case, instead of thinking about rest, I want you to think more about restoration. So I think about this in terms of pictures. So just for the visual peeps, I'm going to give you this like kind of like a weird, awkward metaphor because I feel like it will be helpful. And this one is about skin. So picture maybe you got a sunburn or you have like really, really dry skin. Rest would be leave it alone. Don't do anything else. Restoration would be putting things on it that are helpful for it. It's a different kind of rest. It's resting plus nourishment. So you're not going to be doing the behaviors that brought it to that. So you're going to stay out of the sun. Okay, cool, you're resting. And in addition, you're going to be putting on lotion or aloe. Picture like you're Miss Frizzle and you're like going into the skin and like you can just feel everything getting smoothed out and like the cracks of the skin are like closing. And I don't know, that's where my mind goes when I think about restoration. I also think about restoration hardware, but we're not talking about that. Though we did talk about furnishing. So not too far off. When you're resetting, you're also thinking about this question that we talk about of, am I enough? So if it were to all stop, if you just took a little break from everything that causes you to burn out, can you see that you're enough? And how can you see that if you don't? So in your restoration period, in your resetting period, you get to think of ways to remind yourself that you are enough. And that simply might be, again, Louise Hay, mirror work. We talk about that before. Great idea. It could also be doing things that you love that aren't related to the thing that's burning you out. Finding and understanding your skills in other places. Knowing and understanding that you're a well-rounded person. Another way to reset is to just start with one micro thing. So maybe if you're the people-pleasing type and you just keep overexerting, you keep saying yes, maybe your action step, your restoration step is to just give one no. Whatever it is, just practice it. See what it feels like. Give yourself permission to do it. And then this other idea of resetting would be like a tower moment. And raise your hand if you've had a tower moment. A tower moment is when things destruct so that you can rebuild. And so maybe in this reset, you're destructing everything so that you can rebuild completely. Sometimes it's too far gone to fix. Sometimes we do need to just, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to do this now. That can be seen like with a job, right? That would be a perfect example of I'm going to quit. I'm going to use my savings. I'm going to feel good for the next 3 months while I find a new job that's better suited for me. Or I'm not going to get a job because I'm thankful that I can, work off of my partner's investments for this next period of time. And I'm going to take that time to really find who I am. That'd be a perfect example of destruct and rebuild. The next is a reframe. So a perfect example of this is if you're dancing for exactness or for perfection or for the ability to see results fast, it's a quick shift, a quick reframe of, oh, wait a minute, let me dance to express. Let me dance to feel. Let me dance to release and not to achieve. When we think about dance, we understand that there's two different ways. We understand that there's the internal and the external. And for whatever reason, we get so locked in on the external. Am I looking like the people next to me? Am I doing it the best of my ability? Am I including all of the technique that I have? That's dancing. That's beautiful. And so is releasing that for just a little bit and dancing for fun, dancing for what it feels like inside of you, dancing for what happens when you mess up and you think it's funny, dancing to feel good rather than to look good. And I know this can be a very hard thing to do, and it's also necessary because it makes you a better dancer. It makes you a more well-rounded dancer. The dancers that can look and do everything exact, awesome, good for them. And the dancers that are able to feel and express, that's also amazing. One is not better than the other. In fact, I just told my students last night, if your face is on and something's off in the body, chances are people aren't going to notice that as much as if your face is off and then your body is on, because the audience wants to connect with someone who's feeling. So think about your burnout recovery the next time that you're dancing. And maybe instead of hitting everything so hard, maybe you're lighter on yourself. Maybe you go easier. Maybe you feel more. Maybe you're present. And that's great too. And just another reframe of when we experience these rests, sometimes we judge ourselves on them. And don't worry, I'm going to do a whole other podcast episode on rest. There's this idea of how dance is a universal language, just like music is. And in music, there are rests. There are moments, if you've ever watched a symphony, there are moments where the flutes are not playing at all. They're just not there. However, they're there, they're present. There's also moments in dance where you'll see, like if you're watching a show, there's certain dancers that are on stage and they're not dancing, or they're doing something that's a lighter load than someone else on stage. And then there's also people that are dancers and part of the act that are backstage. So if that is true, then that would be true for you too. You get that opportunity to rest as well. So in closing, if you're burned out, number one, you're not alone. Number two, it's very difficult to not have an experience of burnout, especially if you're goal-oriented. Burnout is not the end. You are not broken. It's a sign that something beautiful wants to exist, and you just get an opportunity to figure out how it can exist better in your life. It's an opportunity to look at your priorities and see what you can prioritize more, things that are more fulfilling for you. It's an opportunity to check yourself. Are you validating yourself? Are you a people pleaser? Are you overexerting, overcommitting? Are you leaking energy? So instead of burnout being this horrible thing, which I know it is, it can feel it, think about it as this really exciting thing, because I'm giving you the permission right now. I know you love when you get permission to do something. So I'm giving you permission to restore, to reset, to go on that vacation, to relax and enjoy dance and movement as it is for what it does internally versus externally. And I'm giving you permission to reflect. Reflect for prevention. And to allow yourself to create more awareness and to understand, why am I doing this? Why am I allowing myself to burn out? So I hope this was helpful for you today, and I hope that you're able to combat your next burst of burnout. And I would absolutely love to ask you for a 5-star written review on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the dance floor.